Hi, and welcome to the Womb and Birth Collective's Pregnancy and Postpartum Summit. I'm Melissa Chin Casey, and we're talking to MichellePurta, a life and marriage coach, who is going to share with us how, in her work, she can also help us bring ourselves back into a better relationship with ourselves. So, thank you, Michelle, for being here. Can you please kind of give us a little background on you and your work?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, thank you so much for having me. So I am a life and marriage coach for moms, and I really do this work to help women break generational cycles of like unhealthy marriages. I feel like we often grow up, if we don't grow up with a healthy marriage as an example, we kind of like look to society to help us understand what that looks like. And unfortunately, healthy relationships don't make for good TV, right? You don't see it in magazines, you don't see it on TV. And so you're really left to your own devices to kind of like figure out what's normal, what's healthy. But oftentimes, what happens is what's normal becomes our bar of what's healthy. And I'm really here to like shatter that and empower women to know that what's normal may not be healthy, right? Conflict is normal, but there is a healthy way to go about it where you can grow together as a couple and grow as an individual. And so, with my background, psych degree, I just love getting to know people and supporting them and really helping them invite productive thoughts into your mind and really analyze like what are the beliefs that I hold that are impacting how I show up in my life, in my partnership, and how is that like creating the experience that I'm having, right? And I really became a life coach more so in the marriage coaching space because of my background. My parents did not have a healthy marriage whatsoever, right? It wasn't like the worst, but also wasn't the best either. I didn't learn how to effectively communicate. I didn't learn what it took to be a true partner. And I didn't witness any like genuine presence or connection or even like emotional intimacy from them. And I don't think that I'm alone in that, especially like I come from a family where like they immigrated into the States. And so their version of like, oh, we should get married and these are the reasons why are very different from my reasons, right? Like I choose to be married because I love this man. We enjoy each other. We want to build a life together. We want to grow and connect with each other and stay that way so that even while we raise kids, we're still connected. It's not like let's put our relationship on pause, and then when the kids are older and more independent, then we're going to come back together and hopefully we're still connected. We still know how to have fun. We still know how to have conversation and live our like happily retired life together. Right. And so like what I witnessed was a lack of communication for my mom. She was very much the classic like martyr where she did everything for the kids, everything for the house while working, right? And my dad was very much like kind of selfish, right? And it's probably from what he witnessed as from his childhood, like what it looked like to be a husband, right? Oh my gosh, I actually recently read that a lot of, women are looking for a husband. And for you to like, you have to be a wife in order to have that, right? But men are looking for a wife. They're not looking to become a husband. Right. And I feel like society has really like done a number on that, where we shape women to be like people pleasers, nurturers, people that really like look to other people to take care of them and forget themselves. Whereas men, it's like, go get whatever you want to do, like go after your goal, like harness that skill, really nurture it and go do it. And so it's very different focuses. And I'm here to like just like break all of that up and help women know like, hey, you can be the woman that you want to be, even while being a mom, even while being a wife, and that you at your core matter as a person, and that it's okay to like speak up and advocate for yourself and have healthy communication, have healthy partnership, and really create that relationship and that dynamic that you want your kids to witness and set as the example, even though you didn't have the example for yourself. And so I feel like I'm like that kind of bridge where I've like, okay, I see how things have been done. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for my kids. So what's the work that I need to do to allow for that to happen? And a lot of that is challenging, challenging what you believe, how you have seen other people do things, and have the courage to do it differently.
Yeah, there's so many elements in just what you said right there that we can just kind of unpack and talk about. But I just want to reflect for a second about what you said about healthy marriage doesn't make for good TV. Healthy relationships doesn't make for good
Boring.
TV. It's boring. And those are the same births that we see on TV. And this summit is focused on supporting people in pregnancy and birth. And just the way that your approach to relationships and marriage is really about mindset and what you want, and kind of an identity, it sounds like.
Yes.
So it sounds like the things that you're working with and teaching people can apply to all different sorts of parts of your life.
Yes.
And I remember when I first had a conversation with you, there was this part of me that was like, well, but after we have a baby, especially postpartum, we're doing so much for other people. Like, why should we try to work on our relationships? Like, why is that landing back on us? And can you kind of share, because that's not how you describe it. So can you kind of speak to that piece and share your insight?
So my personal experience, and I know that this is a common one, is once you have children, you kind of get tunnel vision. You are just like overwhelmed and burnt out, right? You're out touched. You're just like every day kind of like melts into the next, and you don't even know what day it is anymore. It's just one long day, but it's like lasting for like a whole season, it seems like, right? And yes, it's hard to take on more, but the work that it requires to be intentional, to connect with your spouse, doesn't mean that you're like spending hours on end. It really just comes down to, what are the choices that I'm making? How am I showing up? Am I asking for what I need? Am I being transparent about my own experience? Right? I feel like a lot of women assume their partners know what they're going through because they're also there. But there's so much going on in the mind that cannot be seen. There's so much. And that colors your experience. It colors how you react, right? If you are having a particularly difficult day, whether it's hormonal, emotional, physical, all of the above, your partner may not know, and they're just going about their own like way of doing life, like as they always do. And sometimes it doesn't bother you, and other times it's like a really, really big deal. And so if you think about it from their perspective, it's really confusing. And I get it. We go through a lot as women, and it's really easy to get to that place of like resentment. Like, why do I have to do all the work? Why am I keeping the family together? Right? And you are justified in believing that. But does that belief serve you? Does it get you closer to what you want? Or does it have you sitting in the same space of stuckness and bitterness, right? When we're bitter, we go into like the victim mode. And we spin this story, and our brain starts to get activated to look for more reasons why we're right and justified in sitting in like, I'm not doing anything because I just gave birth to a baby. I don't have to do this. It's his job or her job, whoever your partner is. If they cared about it, they would do something. But guess what? You only have control over yourself. And so with that mentality, nothing is going to happen unless that person has the awareness and the tools to actually do something. If they don't know what you're lacking, what you're desiring, they're not even given an opportunity to make change, right? We are not free of action in this place, even if you're tired and exhausted. right? It's like saying, well, I want this and I'm just going to sit here until it comes to me. It doesn't work like that. You've got to take aligned action towards creating that as a possibility, right? You get to empower yourself to be like, well, what do I want? What is going on within me? What might another reason be why they're doing what they're doing, why they're not doing what they're doing, right? Offering compassion for the situation, because what's beautiful and complicated about us is that humans can hold duality.
Yeah.
We can feel like we're lacking and upset over not getting what we need, not feeling supported, or not feeling connected. We can also feel compassion for what they may be experiencing and why they might not be doing things like, oh, well, how is their parents' marriage? What example do they have to be able to show up for me in the way that I need? Have I even explained what I'm going through, right? Or how have I worded this to them? What has my communication with them been like? Has it been very much like blamey, right? Blame culture? Has it been criticizing them? Has it been dismissing all their efforts? We play so much bigger of a role over our experience than we give ourselves credit for. And so I really hope that in watching this, you take a true look at yourself instead of looking outside of you all the time, and know that you can make subtle shifts that don't demand a lot of time to create more of the relationship that you want. Because like, think about choreography, right? Like, I don't know if you watch like Dancing with the Stars or any kind of like dancing show. If you've been doing one dance the whole time, you guys are going to just keep repeating the pattern. But what if you take a side step instead of step forward or backwards? Your partner will follow your lead. The reactions will change. The dynamic will shift. And in that, you will break the pattern and create a new one.
That's a great visual. And it's refreshing because, you're not talking about, putting in this kind of energy to do something, to fix something. You're talking about going within and saying, what do I need right now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really beautiful. So, do you have any like practical, maybe some of the things that are common that come up, like what do I need right now? And especially if you could just think about postpartum and what that is like, because even though the need list is probably very long in that postpartum time, I would imagine that you're probably only going to be doing what you can in the moment, right? Or
Right.
thinking about and feeling out what you can in the moment. So do you have any like maybe practical ones that come up very often that you see?
So thinking about postpartum, you need a lot of stuff, but a lot of things your partner cannot do for you because it's just you, right? Especially if you're like nursing your child, that falls on you. But they can do things to support you, right? They can make your meals for you. They can meal prep for you. They can make life easier for you to be able to spend what is essentially a full-time job, nursing in the very beginning, right? For me, it was about staying hydrated. And so my partner, my husband, would literally leave water everywhere in the house. So no matter where I decided to nurse, I'd be able to grab it within arm's length and drink something, right? Or maybe it's them cleaning the bottles and prepping it for you. So you literally have less to do. So the question really is, if like knowing I'm the sole person to do this one task, what are the things that I don't have to do? What are things that I can delegate out that would make me feel really supported, right? A lot of this work is really asking yourself clarifying questions.
Yeah.
What would it look like for me to feel supported? What does feeling supported even feel like? in my body? How will I know that I feel supported? And what needs to be done to create that feeling, right? Because thoughts create our feelings. They truly do. And so if you're in that space where you're like, I don't feel connected, ask yourself, well, what does connected even mean to me? Because that means different things to different people. That could mean, oh, after dinner, we watch TV together. That could mean we hold hands when we sit on the couch. That could mean we spend 5 minutes talking before we fall asleep. That could mean we have sex, however often, or we flirt. You really have to know individually what your needs are in order to express them. And a lot of times we don't spend time figuring that out. We're just like, I just know that I don't feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a guessing game, kind of like, what do you want to eat for dinner? Well, okay, well, and then they start pitching things. You're like, no, I don't like that. But it's nothing that's helpful.
Right. Sounds like a conversation I have with my kids all the time.
Exactly. It's like, okay, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you, and I know that's a big question, but that's truly the work that we all as individuals, men and women, need to do to get closer to experiencing our life the way we want to. And it's not anyone else's job to figure that out for you. It's yours.
Yeah, those are very practical tips. Like when I'm not feeling supported, what does feeling support mean? What are the things that I would like to have in place where I can feel supported? When I'm not feeling connected, what would it look like to feel connected? Those are great, practical, and very simple ways to look at a problem that could feel very overwhelming and very abstract. Like, I don't know. And when you were saying those, I was thinking about pregnancy and that relationship that people have with their doctor or midwife, or that preparing for birth, that just relationship with themselves when they're preparing for birth. And these are really practical ones that you can bring into that space too.
Absolutely. Because you cannot have these expectations within you and then be disappointed after you didn't even communicate it, right? And I get sometimes there's situations where you don't really know until in the moment you're like, I actually don't like this, right? But know that your voice is worth being heard. What you want matters and gets to take space. So it's not about, I don't want to inconvenience people, like the people pleaser part, right? Like, oh, but they're busy, they have stuff. You can still request and they can always say no, but give them the opportunity to show up for you, just as you show up for so many other people.
What prevents people from engaging in getting what they want, or avoiding confronting with what they really want? People pleasing is definitely one. Yeah, go ahead.
Discomfort. Yeah, that's it. If I had to sum it up in one word, that would be it. It's when we think about the temporary discomfort of conflict, we're very much in a concealed space, like tunnel vision. We're not able to see long term about why this is important to talk about. And so instead, we try and just stay with status quo. What would make this more peaceful right now? Instead of what would make it more peaceful in the future. And so we as women are so accustomed to sacrificing our comfort for other people. But that's not a true, authentic relationship. That's actually you being dishonest with where things are at. And I get it. People do it because it's like, well, I don't want to rock the boat. We have so much on our plate right now. I really just don't want to add more stuff to what we're going through. And certainly timing does have a part in it, but you wouldn't want your partner to do that. You wouldn't want to be blindsided where you're letting it build up and build up and build up, thinking I'm cool, I got this under control, it's really not that important to me, when really you're just dismissing yourself. And then you internally combust, and then people in your inner circle become casualties of it, right? And so it's not actually helpful at all to do that. It's much better and much more honest and vulnerable for you to be upfront about what your experience is, taking full ownership, right? Like, hey, I'm experiencing frustration right now. Not talking about blaming other people, because that's giving away your power, but really just owning, like, I feel myself getting worked up right now, and I think it's because I don't feel supported. And what I need to feel supported in this moment is this. Can you do that? Again, they could say no, and then you can decide what you want to do from there, right? But in internalizing it, you're not doing anyone a favor. It's just a lie. So if you truly crave intimacy, emotional intimacy in your relationship, we must practice vulnerability, being willing to experience temporary discomfort for you to connect on a deeper level. Because that's really required for growth in a relationship, in all relationships, right? Even with your kids, where you're like, maybe you lose it one day just because you've had it. Like, they've been whining all day, or they've been especially challenging, and you're triggered and you yell. What connects us back is by owning it. It's like, I'm sorry. I apologize for losing it. I got past the point of frustration. That's repair work. That creates a bond where they're like, oh, you make mistakes too. And that's very true in partnerships as well. When we try and appear perfect all the time, our partner doesn't feel like they can make mistakes. But when we normalize trial and error, showing up as human, but doing the repair work and growth work, that's real conscious partnership. It's not about showing up perfect. It's about being intentional.
It sounds like there's a level of acceptance, accepting ourselves and what we're truly feeling. There's a level of being able to access what we're truly feeling. And sometimes, feelings get tucked away and hidden so deeply that it's sometimes hard to access that. Do you have any tips on ways that we can have that courage to accept what we're feeling? And like, sounds like you were talking about it in a neutral way too, right? So not being like, this is happening and but we're like, hey, I'm looking at myself and I see this, Do you have any tips on how to get in touch with ourselves?
Be still. We are so busy. We just want to go, 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 go. Setting intentional time to really like ask yourself, how am I doing really? Life is so distracting that we hardly check in with ourselves until we blow up or we lose it. And we're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm clearly not fine. Right? Taking space. And this could even be considered self-care. Right? Where you just like check in with yourself. There are so many journals out there that you can just like quickly buy and like start your day with, end your day with. It doesn't take very much time. I know like postpartum moms, like time is a luxury, but it's in taking that time to slow down that you can start to really become more intentional, become more self-aware, become more attuned to your own needs so that you can meet your partner with truth. With what you need, with what you need support with what you want to go after, right? Maybe it's like, I would really love 15 minutes to myself every morning after the first feeding. How can we make that happen? Right? But if we don't give ourselves time to actually like think about, where am I at right now? Where do I want to go? We just continue to be on autopilot. And we don't even know like the damage that it does to us until it's too late. And you're like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
It was in the little moments where you didn't become intentional, where you didn't challenge it, where you didn't go inwards.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I'm remembering my experience with my third baby, and I had postpartum depression twice.
Mhm.
Um, the first time I was so busy and overwhelmed, I didn't have time to even recognize it. And the
Yeah.
second time, I was so overjoyed with my new baby that I didn't recognize it. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Um, and so it took a little while before I recognized it with the second time it happened. And when I did start to recognize it, there was a sense of being really afraid to look at it. So
Mhm.
I ended up getting support in from different places because I really couldn't look at myself, honestly, look at myself without feeling fear of like what I would find inside.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for like when that happens, what you could do, who you can reach out to, things like that?
Yeah. Well, you can reach out to me. I am one
Mhm.
option. Um, that work truly is sacred. Not a lot of people do it. I'm glad to hear that coaching is becoming more prevalent and normalized in this space, but navigating your internal world is the most worthwhile work you can do in your life. It really is, because we're just walking around with so much trauma. Doesn't matter how small or big it is. We all have experienced some form of trauma, whether it's how we were raised, even if it was like not with like bad intentions, we still have some form of trauma with how we were raised and the narrative that our minds created to make sense out of why we didn't get our needs met, or relationships we had, friendships, romantic, people putting us down, maybe we were bullied, maybe we had, insecurities around our bodies, or why we weren't like somebody else, or even the media and how we compare ourselves to what we see, right? We're all walking around with unresolved traumas. And so, yes, it is really scary. And the work is heavy sometimes. It's not all like rainbows and sunshine. But I can honestly tell you that in doing the work, it helps you feel lighter because we suppress so much. And this is why I started to add breath work into my practice, right? Like being able to do somatic work, like healing through the body, not talk therapy, right? Not mindset work, but really allowing the body to fully express what I've pushed down unintentionally, subconsciously over the last like 3 decades, right? Being being that like giving that opportunity for my body to really like release what has been stored has been so freeing. And so if you're in a space where you're like, I just feel stuck, and I know I have a lot of work to do on myself, but I'm afraid. Step away from yourself. Look at yourself as a third person and really observe. What would you offer to a friend in your position? What would you offer your children in your position? You wouldn't say, bear down and just stick with it. You'll be okay, right? You'd be like, you deserve to be happy. You deserve support around this. It's so easy to just like, oh, I can handle it, right? But it's okay to let yourself not be strong all the time. It's okay to say, yeah, I'm doing okay, but I can do better. I can be better. I could feel better. I know that life has more to offer me. And I know that I'm worth the time and the space and the energy and, financial, if that's part of it, right? And I know that this is going to have a ripple effect because as you become more you, which we are so afraid to be, right? When we become more us and we do the healing and we get familiar with ourselves and truly come to love and accept who we are, everything around us changes. How people interact with us, how we interact with people, our perspective shifts. Things become more authentic. and more rich and less about like facades, right? It's not about looking happy. It's about feeling happy. And that takes work. It's not about luck. It's not about how special you are or how worthy you are. We're all worthy of happiness. It's a matter of who do we need to become? What do we need to believe? How much do we need to love ourselves more in order to actually claim it?
Mm. I love the breath work piece. I love that you're doing the somatic body work along with the mindset work, along with the trauma work. It's mind, body, and spirit. So
Yeah.
it makes sense, and it seems like it would be a deeper healing. And it reminds me of birth again, just
Yeah.
the how we really physically have to get into our body,
Surrendering.
our and how much our body changes. And so every day it's like a new relationship, like, oh, where's my balance, where's my breath, how's my circulation doing today, what does my digestion feel like? It is a very somatic experience to go through pregnancy and birth.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like refamiliarizing you with your body and your new body and what all that means to you and what you're making it mean about who you are, your identity, and knowing that you are more than your body. You're more than your body.
Yeah, I want to get a little bit nerdy on the biology and the physiology, because this is a concept that I that keeps coming up for me. And one of the things that I learned in my therapy with my therapist is that before you're a certain age, your brain is not structured. Your brain actually structures in order to understand the world, right? So what you're seeing as you're young, it shapes you. And then if a trauma happens before that, then it's completely somatic. You feel it, but you don't know what it is. There's no brain processing around it, right? And so when I think about stored emotions in the body, and when I think about pregnancy and how during pregnancy you are not just embodying a new life, you're also embodying these new ideas that you want to birth, these new values that you want to birth. And then when you think about how long it takes your cells to regrow, you can actually restructure your brain, you can restructure your body. But during birth, I've seen so many labors, right? I've seen so many births happen that I've noticed that the body actually does this really fast forward transformation. And this is a theory of mine that, like, because your cells are reconstructing and reconfiguring, because your vaginal tissues are going from, your cells being like this to your cells being like this, and allowing the tissue to stretch because of all these hormones that are kind of restructuring your brain patterns. That this is my theory, is that there's an opportunity that if you're doing all this work during pregnancy and mindset work and rediscovering your identity, that in birth transformation can happen like that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I actually did that on myself. I was pregnant when I was doing a lot of healing work, and I can definitely tell the differences between before, like my son and my daughter. For me as a mother, and also just how they are. It's pretty wild. It is pretty wild. And what's crazy is that we can inherit trauma, right? So like we existed as an egg in our grandma when she was pregnant with our moms. Isn't that wild? I
So
believe
we were
around
actually in the body.
months, we were in her body. When our moms were 5 months old, we existed as an egg.
Yeah.
So we do inherit trauma from, the lineage before us.
Right. If you follow that, then our mother was in our great grandmother, right? So if she passed down trauma to our mother.
Exactly. So it takes many cycles of generations to naturally, without intervention, for cycles to actually change, for trauma to like disappear. And so it is in this work that we get to speed it up, which is really beautiful, which is like a huge opportunity for us to start a new cycle for future generations. And the same goes for our fathers as well. They can inherit stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, take on, and then when our mothers were pregnant, we can inherit trauma she experienced during pregnancy and before that, based on her well-being, as well as our fathers. In like, trauma can get into the sperm as well. It's all pretty wild.
Thank you for validating that. Yeah, that's a good message that we need to hear.
Yeah, a lot of times like we may not understand why we have certain responses, and it could be from our own experiences, or it could be stuff we inherited.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like you're talking about emotional trauma, but there's also the stress and how it affects.
There's also yes, it's actually all related to stress and cortisol. So when our bodies or their bodies experience an influx of stress, whether it was ongoing or like a one-time event, it leaves an imprint if it's not processed. So like the book that I'm reading, it's called It Didn't Start With You. They have examples of the Holocaust and what their ancestors went through and how it affected them. So like they themselves never experienced what their grandparents experienced, but yet they find like they have this irrational fear of certain situations, but they didn't even live through it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whew. Do you want to speak on that a little bit more? Is there any other pieces? I don't have questions, but
no, I guess the point of this is be gentle on yourself and know that it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It's just part of your life story and that you get to heal through it, right? All of this work, like what you do to prepare yourself for birth, what you do to help your life feel lighter, and for you to show up with less fear, less judgment, less everything we feel like we are pressured to be like. You get to start living life for yourself, and you get to do that. That is literally your birthright, to be happy.
Beautiful. When we were talking previously, you mentioned these fundamental concepts like inner child work. Can you kind of give us a little bit about these different concepts that you work with and how we can understand?
So when we're, I want to say up until age 7, 5 or 7, something somewhere like that, every experience we have growing up starts to shape how we view the world. Whether your dad was absent or there, present, right, emotionally and physically, whether your mom was emotionally mature or not, whether they did some form of punishment, that all colors how we think the world works. And as we grow up, we start to see how that really affects how we react in certain situations, what we avoid, what we spearhead, what we are willing to do, what we are like afraid to do. And so inner child work is really about understanding what do you need to reparent within yourself. So it's almost like, if I could do my childhood over again and give myself what I needed, what would that be? So for me personally, like my parents were not emotionally there for me. It was very much like, be obedient, have a smile on your face. All other feelings are inconvenient for me. And looking back, it's like, oh, it's because they were not given the opportunity to fully express themselves because their parents were uncomfortable and so they got reprimanded for it. And so that's what happened with me. Anytime I would cry, I'd be reprimanded. And so I grew up believing my sensitivity was something to be ashamed of. When in reality, my sensitivity just means that I'm attuned to my aliveness, to my experience. And that's what offers me clarity around, how do I feel? What do I need? Right? And knowing that something's not right and really like listening to my body for all the wisdom that it has to offer and opportunities for me to grow. Yeah. And so doing inner child work is really about offering compassion to our parents for what they did, knowing that it wasn't on purpose, but they were doing the best that they could, and holding duality of like, I suffered during that time. I didn't get my needs met. What did I need, and how does that show up in my life today, in my partnership? When do I start to feel those familiar feelings of abandonment? Or when do I start to feel those feelings of like anxiety? What is that about? Right? Because it isn't always about that current circumstance. Oftentimes it's like a remembering. Because one situation that you may experience that is like a really big overload on your system, to another person could just be like, oh, that's not a big deal. So why is that, right? Most of the time it's inner child work that needs to be done. It's really understanding ourselves and accepting what happened while acknowledging, what do I need in this moment? What can I offer myself? What can I ask for support with? And be able to consciously move forward, knowing that that's a part of your story.
Mm.
So it's not a brokenness, right? It's a, okay, well, that's my experience. And this is my take on life. Does that support me? Do I want to expand that? Do I want to love myself through that? Because there's a gift with every trauma that we experience. We become different as a result of that. Maybe we become more sensitive to things and become more supportive around other people who have experienced the same thing, right? There is a gift in all lessons. And we get to give that to ourselves, because that's what's truly going to change the landscape of how we parent and how we treat other people and how we treat ourselves.
Yeah. So there's that question that keeps coming up about what do I need in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about, during pregnancy, there's so many decisions, and there's a sense that the pregnant person does have a very strong intuition about what their
Yes.
needs are. There's also a partnership in many cases. There's a partnership. There's a partner that you're communicating with. What happens when there's differing opinions or even conflict, and how you use the words for holding the duality? How do you hold the duality in compassion, or the conflict in compassion? Do you have any advice for, conflict?
Yeah. So for those who are going to be like working on conception, I would hash these out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Preventative work is always better, but if you're not in that space, because I don't feel like that is encouraged enough, then I would sit down and have a conversation about, different approaches and what you see for your family long term. And so what I like to recommend for my clients to do is to find where agreement exists. Because when we feel like we're on different islands, it's almost like you're at war with each other. Like, no, we're either on my island or on your island. But what if there's a space where you can go to another island and support each other through it, right? Because it's not about following any schools of thought. It's about doing what you feel is right for your family, right? So finding where agreement exists. Okay, so what kind of children do we want to raise here? Like, what's the end goal? What can we agree on? And then start to work your way backwards. Okay, so what do we agree on in terms of approach? And then have like an adult conversation about it. About like, okay, so I like this approach. You like that approach. Well, what do you like about that approach? Okay, these are my concerns. What concerns do you have over my approach? Okay, and like have flushed out conversations about the fears that are coming up. Well, I feel like if we do that, they're going to end up this way, or they're going to walk all over us. Oh, well, I'm afraid that if we do things your way, we're not going to have a true, genuine connection with them. They're going to hate us or fear us. I don't want them to fear us. Right? Having that really real conversation with each other and figuring out, okay, well, what's a way that we can do this where we both of our fears are taken into account and we can move forward to make sure that we're on the same page, because parents being on the same page is the biggest thing, right? Kids are opportunists. So if they see a little crack, they're going to be like, ah, you know, like they're going to bust it wide open. Okay, for these things, I'm going to talk to mom. For these things, I'm going to talk to the other one. You know, like they're going to do that. And you need to show up as a united front and have those conversations behind the scenes. If you're like, oh, I don't actually agree with how you handled that, you know, like whatever. And then sort that out so that you guys can come forward again, being a united front. So that's the easiest way around that. It's hard when, again, back to that normal conversation, like what's normal, what's healthy. And having the courage to really advocate for how you want your family dynamic to be. What's your intention for the family? What's your intention for your kids' upbringing? What kind of humans are you trying to raise here? I bet you will agree on that bit, right? You're not going to be like, oh yeah, I want a responsible contributor. And the other person's like, I want to raise an irresponsible person who's really selfish. Like that's just not going to happen. Right? So like lighten up the room by like figuring out, what do you agree on? Because it's in that like, okay, we are on the same team, where you start to become open to brainstorming, right? Open to figuring out what's a new way we can do this. And really just get to know each other through the process. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, but that third island really helps, right? So to make it that visual that you're not on a battleground, you know, you're not on two opposite sides. That you may be an individual, you know, and have differing minds, opinions, but you can make it to that third island.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a few wrap-up questions, but before I ask them, is there anything else that you wanted, any other messages that you wanted to, or pieces that you wanted to cover? You may be able to cover them in the wrap-up questions.
Okay.
Okay. So, for someone experiencing pregnancy, birth, or postpartum, what is your best advice?
Be gentle on yourself. Truly, you went through so much. You are going through so much. And it's important for you to just stay connected with yourself. Don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of who you are. And even if you do for a moment, remember to come back home, right? Because you are and always will be more than just one identity. You are more than a mom, more than a wife, more than a woman. Like, you are everything. And so just be kind to yourself, love yourself through the process, embrace the journey. and ask for help when you need it. And don't be afraid to do that, because you deserve it just like anybody else does.
Yeah. What is something that they don't tell you about pregnancy, birth, or postpartum?
So much.
Yeah.
More so postpartum. What's interesting is that you get a lot of attention when you're pregnant and when you first have the baby, and then all the support falls away. And so being really clear with your loved ones, with your village, if you don't have one, create one, find one, and just have that in place, right? Have that person that you can just like randomly call up or text and be like, hey, I just need some like good like girl time where we just like talk or go hang out, right? And I feel like it's not shared enough about like the different struggles that you may experience, and knowing that it doesn't mean anything about you and your capability of being a good mom. Like I made my initial challenge with nursing mean something about my body and me, about not being able to provide for my son. And I was like, I went so type A on it. I'm going to eat all the flaxseed and drink all the water, eat all the oatmeal and, you know, lactation cookies and you name it. I'm going to do the power pumping and I'm just going to like make this work. And it was out of a place of like shame and guilt. And just know that like your body is your body. Like accept it for what it is and what it can offer and what maybe it cannot. And it has nothing to do with you as a person. I think that was like the biggest surprise for me, those two. Like the lack of like people checking up on you. They just want to see the baby, you know, but really like prepping your network. Like, I'm gonna need this. When you visit, can you like, you know, have boundaries in place? Like, I'm only taking visitors at this time. Please don't come by unannounced. You know, like being really clear about how you want to experience these like new seasons as a mom and what you are needing in the moment, whether it's from your partner, your parents, your in-laws, your friends, whatever. And just be true to you and what you need.
Yeah, that's great. Really, really good answer, reply. Good message. The last question is, for someone who's viewing this talk, what benefits do you think that they can get and put into their lives?
We went through a lot in this conversation. And I think if you were to take away one thing out of this entire talk, is that your experience matters. Don't let your experience be put on the back burner, and just love yourself throughout the whole process. Love yourself enough to ask for help. Love yourself enough to do the work to figure out what is it that I need that's going to have me feeling how I want to feel, right? Like you matter. And if no one has told you that in a while, let me tell you that you matter. You're enough. You're more than enough. And you are worthy of your own love and the love of those around you. And that's it.